Hey, what's up guys? This is Raging Cypher here with Monarch Squadron Gaming, and I'm bringing you another review in a series that I'm going to call Time Tested. God damn it, that sounds so fucking stupid. Now, as a rule for this series, I spend months playing the games I review, and the only review I give them is after the hype wears off of, being a new game. I don't want to review a game that I'm still personally hyped about, such as what happened with Fallout 4, because I don't want to give a biased look into the game. I want to tell you guys the honest opinion I have on it after I've played it for a long time. So I kind of want to just give a look into the good, the bad, and the ugly of the games and what they did right and wrong. So I wait a few months and I play the games, and once I've either finished them or sufficiently, rage quit from them, I make a video. So after about, let's say a little over a year later, because I've been procrastinating, I finally decided to do a review on From Software's Bloodborne. Now, I've played every Souls game except for Dark Souls 3, which I'll hopefully be getting soon. Expect a review on that later. I trudged through Anor Londo, getting stomped nearly every inch of the way in Dark Souls 1, beating the game in less than a week just before Dark Souls 2 came out. I reached Soul Level 200 and I beat New Game Plus, and had a pretty great time with it. When Dark Souls 2 came out, I played it, and although I didn't like it as much in the end, that didn't stop me from spending well over 400 hours on it, playing over multiple characters and different playstyles. I went back and played Demon Souls, but lacking a PS3, I never got to finish, even though I was really enjoying it. When From Software released their trailer for their PS4 exclusive Bloodborne, I got excited. Like Dark Souls, with guns, they said. I thought to myself, hey, I like Dark Souls, and I like guns. What's the worst that could happen? Well, when I bought my PS4, Bloodborne came with it for free due to a deal with GameStop, so I booted it up and gave it a try, and let me tell you what the worst that could happen was. 3 separate occasions, I lost my game files. When I did manage to get the game going, it was horribly laggy and buggy. It felt like playing a stop-motion movie. The loading screens were often longer than the time I was able to survive in the game due to the game coming very near freezing every time I entered combat. I managed to update the game, even though it took me 5 tries, and I managed to get it playable. Much to my horror, the game itself is horribly unbalanced. Nearly 100% of the difficulty of the game is easy to beat enemies joining forces and ganking you to death while you stand there stun-locked with no way to escape. Not impossible to play, mind you, and it's not impossible to get through them, it's just incredibly annoying. I thought, oh well, maybe the bosses will be worth it. So I trudged on. I began to notice the enemies were almost always glass cannons, and while the first 1 or 2 bosses were fun, I soon began to notice that the bosses themselves were massively overpowered, generally killing you with 1 or 2 hits that are almost always extremely fast and near impossible to dodge. And many, like Vicar Amelia, were easily patterned but had super high health and the ability to heal, which, unless you know the game's mechanics and how to prevent an enemy from healing, you probably won't figure it out yourself, turning what would be a 30-minute battle into a 2-hour-long battle and a frustrated Google search after dying for the 19th time, thus breaking your pride and immersion in the game. The game lags so badly at times that when attempting to record, I'd hit the share button on my controller and it wouldn't open the menu. I'd hit it again only to bring up the menu and immediately close it, deleting 15 minutes of non-repeatable gameplay footage. Oh, and let's not forget, it's a 2015 game and the characters still don't move their mouths. The lack of weaponry combined with the dumbing down of the leveling system, increase of leveling price compared to older games, and decrease of souls or echoes from bosses make for an annoying minigame of trying to balance leveling with buying necessary items and improving your weapon. Speaking of improving your weapon, the game generally doesn't give you enough material to level more than 1 weapon at a time, and some weapons that are really good for 99% of what you do will absolutely not work on some bosses. Take Tenitris for example. It's incredibly good for fighting enemies everywhere except the area that it's in. It was so good that I leveled it up without even thinking about it, and got it to, I think, like, level 8, which was all of my blood shards. Cue me being unpleasantly surprised when I found out it is useless against the area boss, I think his name is Parl or something like that, because of its electrical damage resistance. It's too slow to use against the Shadows of Yharnam, and it's not strong enough to use against, multiple enemies at once. The game nudges you to stick to the Saw, Cleaver, or the Kirkhammer, and taking a deviation from these two is a big risk when you only have the ability to fully level 1 weapon. The guns are extremely disappointing. The only useful ones in my experience were the various blunderbusses, which occasionally stagger. This is useless against 90% of the enemies in the game, and the few it's useful for, it's only useful in a situation where you've screwed up horribly anyway. For example, getting out of a corner when being attacked by a werewolf beast thing. Pistols are useless for anything but long distance aggroing, because, sometimes you want to call them over to you and get your face smacked. I won't forget to mention that the blunderbusses are annoying as hell in PvP, and some people get upset when you use it because it's so annoying. It's almost unavoidable, and a good hit will stagger your player, leaving you open to critical attacks. Speaking of critical attacks, backstabs are no longer fun or viable during combat. You have to charge your power attack from behind the enemy to perform a critical, and many weapons are slow enough on the swing that the enemy you're backstabbing has time to get unstaggered and avoid it, leaving backstabs only useful for sneak attacks in most cases. Parry and riposte is now wait for the right time to shoot, and works about the same way it does in Dark Souls, but is a lot less satisfying. For whatever reason, From Software decided to go back to the hold circle to run, tap it to jump control scheme. This setup, combined with input or flat out game lag, has caused me to walk right off cliffs to my death. This was a non-issue in Dark Souls 2, where the L3 button was the jump button when sprinting. Oh, and there's no way to change it in the game settings. Looking for things that I like about the game is hard to do when I can't make myself like the gameplay. But while gothic scenery is not generally my thing, I'm much more of a medieval scenery lover. That's just me. The game's atmosphere and scenery are gorgeous. The sounds and musical scores are excellent, and the gameplay itself is fairly intense and promotes a more aggressive approach than Dark Souls ever did. I think it's honestly too bad that it does this by putting you up against multiple weak enemies more often than one skilled enemy. A few of the boss fights were fun, the Blood-Starved Beast and the Cleric Beast come to mind, but many others felt like boring repeats of old Dark Souls bosses. For example, Vicar Amelia feels like Sif the Great Grey Wolf with healing powers. In the end, I'd much rather replay Dark Souls or even Dark Souls 2 than Bloodborne. I miss the mystery and suspense of the old games. Dark Souls had me searching every corner of the game for clues on the story, but with Bloodborne, I find the story more of an annoyance and find myself skipping nearly every cutscene and conversation, because it just doesn't interest me. The difficulty that was praised by so many critics is artificial, all based around overwhelming the players with sheer numbers, speed, or health. Some super large enemies even get ultra powerful attacks that combo faster than my character is allowed to even swing her weapon. Enemies like Rom get attacks that are on the brink of being completely impossible to dodge, and if you put points into anything besides health, forget about escaping grapples. The artificial difficulty, the cheap attacks, the horrible frame rate, input lag, and hitbox issues, along with the lack of variety in builds, weapons, and armor, all lead up to a game that feels almost like a chore to play for me. Not the worst game I've played by far. That honor would go to Ace Combat Assault Horizon or Duke Nukem Forever, but I wouldn't recommend this game to anyone personally. I'm not going to say most people won't enjoy it. For those of you that like numerical rating systems, anything below 5 being nearly unplayable garbage, and anything above 8 being excellent, I'd give this game a 6 out of 10. But a rent it if you want to try it game. It's on my list of games I'm glad I got for free for a reason. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Leave a comment and tell me how wrong I am, and I'll probably still hate Bloodborne. Thanks. See yas.